As you can imagine, right, as you can imagine, explaining 1 year of activities will not be easy. We will try to do it in 45 minutes. So starting, wait, okay. So starting with an introduction. So this was already explained, but just to briefly mention that basically IRTF, it's part of the EGI CSIRT, but it's, let's say, the operational group. Basically, we have on-duty rotas where we handle, as a first responders, any incident that is happening on the EGI grid. We are distributed across the Europe with different organizations, and basically we handle all the incident response and forensics investigations within the EGI infrastructure. An example of the activities that we handle are the vulnerabilities. So we have Pakiti agents deployed on the different computing nodes of the EGI infrastructure, and from there we can get a status of the patching of those Linux systems based on the vulnerabilities reported by the SVG group, which is another group inside the EGI CSIRT. So basically, based on that, we can trigger alerts, we can report vulnerabilities to those sites, and we can see that this year multiple ones were reported. And here you can see a dashboard of what we can see and how we are triggering these reports. Another of the activities that we do, and probably if you are site admins, you have heard about us, is about communication challenge. So basically, one of the most critical steps during incident response is the communication. So establish these channels to exchange information, and one of the mostly used in our in our community, it's the email. So basically, what we use is that we send an email to all the security contacts of the sites and BIOS, requesting them to access a link. And basically, when they access to that link, we get a report that they have access, the timestamp, etc., etc. And then we know that basically this email is still operational. So then, once an incident happens, we know that this information is up to date. One of the improvements that we have been working during 2024 is about the workflow of this challenge. Basically, now we have introduced different steps. First is that now we are sending a pre-notification, so you will receive an alert that this challenge will happen few days or weeks in advance. So then, first, we can already work with the EGI operations to handle those that have already issues. So basically, we do this first iteration, then we do the challenge itself, and once we have 24 hours have passed, then we can start following up with the sites to see why they did not reply, if there were issues on a spam filtering or on the email infrastructure, or if there was another issue. So then we start following up, and after 7 days, we close it. We continue following up with those sites that had some issues, and otherwise we close the challenge. We have to thank EGR operations for this effort of communicating to the sites and BIOS that have problems to keep all the contacts up to date. So just to have an idea of why we do that, besides the fact that it's important to have operations up to date, we have to state that it's on the incident response policies and procedures. So basically, we ask that any security communication needs to be handled within 4 hours for all EGI sites. If this doesn't happen, so by policy, the site would go to suspension. Suspension is a state in GovDB, which basically will label the sites that have no reply to those communications. Getting the graphics of the number of sites that are suspended or the different status, we see that 221 currently are certified, but we have 70 that are suspended, and then other ones that are uncertified or credited. The problem is that only the certified sites are the ones that are receiving those communication challenge and the Pakiti agent. So basically, for those that are not that are suspended or uncertified or candidate. So we are not sending communication challenge. So we don't make sure that the contact is up to date, and we don't receive vulnerabilities reports. So that's why it's important that the VOs also consume this information, because if there is an incident in those sites, we cannot guarantee that we can do an incident response. Moving forward, for the VOs, it's similar. So the VOs agree on participate on incident response. There are no direct penalties, so we don't have the suspension mechanism for them. So basically, we try to build closer relationship with the VOs in order to improve all this workflow during incident response. Now let's see the results. So we ran two different challenges during 2024. Initially, there is one for sites. So here we will see the results. From 221 participants, in April, we saw that 88% of them did reply in 24 hours. And then in October, it was a bit less. It was 158. So we wanted to understand why why they were not replying, because as you can see, it's substantial number. This means that 30% of the sites did not reply to security communication. So if there was a critical incident, that may be problematic. So basically, here we analyze it, and we saw that most of them, or a big part of them, were due to technical problems. So either because the email was labeled as spam, or because then the site was ignored, so it was not part of the communication, or some email failed. So we followed up on all of them. The other ones, it was maybe because the email was updated, so they have to update the contact, or because it was not seen. So by correcting all of those, we see that only the 13% of the sites on the second case, so not 30, but 13 in this case, failed to respond. So we are working continuously to improve those numbers and to make sure that we are close to zero. So then if an incident happens, we can cover any of them. We also see that 4% did not respond to neither of the two campaigns, which is alarming, because it means that it's very probable that they would not reply on a real case neither. If we see the numbers for the VOs, we can see that this is even more alarming, because 101 VOs, so 44% of them, did not respond to either of the two campaigns. So if we see the numbers, we see that only the number of responsive sites, it was around 30 and 40% in April and October. We need to work with this. Now, EGI operations will also help on the VOs. So we know that VOs are not directly part of the EGI infrastructure, but they are highly connected, and therefore EGI operations offer their support also to follow up on the VOs and help them to have all the contacts updated. So hopefully in 2025 we should see much better numbers. Okay, so this is the main activities. Now let's see the incident, so the operational part of our work. So basically, from the site perspective, if you go to the SEC 01 incident response policy, so you will see that it's very detailed, the different steps that we expect from the sites, okay? There are different, starting from the communication to then all the different steps that the site needs to do in coordination with the EGI CSIRT. But as we can see, the first is already about communication, right? About explaining to the EGI CSIRT where there is an incident, where they have any detection or any suspicion. So you can access the links afterwards, and I suggest you to review it. Then how it usually happens. So let's understand from your perspective what's our work. So usually what we receive is a report to our contact addresses about something that has been detected at the site. Then the person on duty, the one that is on the rota, evaluates the report and checks whether this is an incident and starts the investigation. Then we coordinate the incident, so we work with the victim to investigate it, to do the analysis, the forensics. We coordinate with the different VOs, the CAs, other CSIRTs, or law enforcement if necessary, to coordinate all those incidents. and also issue broadcast to the other members of the infrastructure, so to the other sites, etc., because sometimes they have to run some scans to detect if they have been compromised as well. And at the end, we write a closing report, we do a debrief, and we do all the feedback process of adding all the improvements for the following times. So this is, we use a general ticketing system. So also for you to understand how we work. So basically, before there were some questions because on the communication emails, we have a URL where there were the links, without understanding that this is just like a mailing list, is acting from the site perspective as just a mailing list. We have visibility on this infrastructure to keep track of the different investigations, but it's mainly used because sometimes we have to handle incidents where affect different sites, and therefore we have to handle centrally. But for the site perspective, it's just as any other mailing list. So let's start with the interesting part, with the incidents review. Let's see what types of incidents we had during 2024. Basically, although the numbers seem low, you will see that there are interesting cases. So for example, the crypto mining, we put 1+1 because there was one incident that started in 2023, but continued in 2024. And then we have unauthorized access, identity management, and exploitation of softwares. Even though those are general tags for the classification, some of them involve other types of attacks. Let's start with the first. So you will see that the complexity of the incidents or the interest of the incidents keeps growing. So stay with me. So first of all, we start with identity mismanagement. So what happens is that all users from a university IDP were assigned to the same EGI checking account. So basically, they all had the same identity, and this was due to the misutilization of the VO person ID field. In order to mitigate this issue, we had to contact the IDP, debug what was going on, and basically the VO field on the EGI perspective was disabled for all the users as a quick mitigation strategy. Then the identification to those users were switched to another field, which is the EduPerson unique ID. And then we check all the logs to make sure that during this time where we had no visibility or no differentiation between those users that were doing activities on the infrastructure, so to make sure that nothing was malicious. Then the university implemented the solution, so then it could be back to normal. This was the first incident. Then the second incident was about users misbehaving. Here I put the S in red because we had quite few cases, like 4 in particular. This year has been quite substantial that, so we have to see in 2024 if this behavior persists. Basically, what happens with those incidents, it's always the same, but there are few differences. So user always starts with the user attempting to access multiple and unconnected resources, okay? So asking to get these resources without much connection within them. This raises alerts from the admins, and then there are different accounts or users that are trying to do that. The first case is when there is a compromised account that they try to get just to move laterally, let's say, and to spread out the infrastructure. The second case is when it's a generic account, like whatever random account just that tries to access. And then finally, where is the legit account? We will see more detail later. So basically, what happens in those cases is that when we detect those let's say, lateral movements or those access requests, we contact the IDP, we suspend the user and delete their active sessions, so we make sure that they cannot continue abusing the system. We investigate what are the activities, what they were doing, to see if something needs to be handled. In this case, in none of them we saw any sign of abuse, so it was more exploratory, we can say. Some of the VOs which granted access were unresponsive. So when we were trying to contact to receive the logs or to get more information, they were not replying. And some of them were not replying neither on the communication challenge. That's why we say that it's so important to be active on that. The VOs provided access to the resources on free trial basis in some cases. So basically, we give access to the user because it's our general policy, even though we know that we should restrict to only when necessary. And some other cases, which is interesting, is that the user really want to access those resources. So he even provided legitimate information like the passport and other real information. So basically, we can see these different strategies to access resources. Okay, and then incident 3. This is a site compromise. This is a more complex incident. This incident started with a high load. It was a suspicion of a site admin. Why this computing node has this alert with critical CPU overload. And then he asked us for help. In order to investigate further, we asked the site to deploy a forensics proxy. So this is something that you need to be aware of. So we never want the data to be transferred to us. We just ask a proxy and we do all the simulation within the infrastructure. So basically, we started analyzing. When we accessed the machines, there were no exceptional load on the systems, no suspicious process, no unusual ports opened. But then there was this connection without the PID assigned. And then we analyzed the IP that was on that connection. And there were no hits in various total or anything. So nothing really suspicious to the port. But still, it was, I don't know, we wanted to go further. So basically, we started to analyze if there was a rootkit. We did detect that there were processes being hidden. So basically, by getting the path of where those processes, let's say, triggers were stored, we could see that the hash of those were associated to crypto mining. And from here, the investigation continued. We analyzed the payload and we see that they were doing different defense mechanism and different ways to obfuscate. So we can see that they activated as a Linux, and then they were using different scripts for the C2 connections, for the triggering configuration, etc. We can see the rootkit injection. We can see that they were hiding all the processes, they were wiping the logs, and what is also very interesting is that they were checking if someone was connected to stop the processes, and that's why they received the alerts of high load, but then when we were connected to the machine, we did not see any high load. It was because it was already being monitored by the attackers. So what was the impact? So by using the wallet that they had on the configuration files, we could identify all the hosts that were compromised on that infrastructure. We could see that it was most of the infrastructure, not only computing nodes, but other systems. And then we could see the activity, on live activity in internet. But this is not the most interesting part of it. The most interesting part is that after we were pushing to get more and more information to understand how this really happened, it was notified that another attack happened 6 months earlier. But this one was not reported to us. So we had no idea that this happened. We just did all this analysis without knowing the other, and then was revealed. So they tried to reinstall all the infrastructure, but it wasn't fully patched. So then they got compromised again. And since they got on a corner, then they contact us. So it's very important that you let us know from the very beginning, because then we can assist you from the start. Okay, this was interesting. Let's see what happened 6 months earlier. So basically, they had exposed BMCs on the internet, and it was detected by the attackers on Shodan. Then all the IPMI interfaces had default credentials, so it was very easy to abuse the system. They exploited vulnerabilities with outdated CentOS 7 to escalate the privileges. They use IKVM to gain full control on the physical server, and then since it was a RAID 1, they used one of the disks to virtualize their own infrastructure and then deploy virtual machines. So basically the site was still operating because they were using one of the disks, and the other one was used by the attackers to deploy all its infrastructure, so all the tools, everything that they wanted. They accessed to limited virtual LANs by doing a flooding on the firewall. And then basically when they got access to other machines, they found SSH keys. And from here, the SSH keys were unprotected. So basically they could just move around. And since those SSH keys were admin, basically they had access to the whole infrastructure. There were also like even other resources like Supermicro firewalls, so not only computing nodes, that they had default or missing passwords. So they not even compromised like the computers, but like all the infrastructure. And here you have an example that they access the DHCPs and DNS to even configure the best way for them all the network infrastructure. So it was a very interesting case at the end. And we can see the scope of the attack. And now, last but not least, we have the multi-site compromise. So going one step further, and an example of why it makes sense to contact not only your local security team, but also the EGI Incident Response Task Force, is because sometimes the attacks go further. So this started with stolen usernames as passwords. So they were using different techniques. The attackers were using password spraying and credential stuffing. So basically taking word lists of possible passwords and trying brute forcing the access based on different accounts that were publicly exposed, etc. So they got access. They used all this brute force with different open source tools. You will see that in this presentation there will be a lot of open source. Then all the lateral movement was done as before by abusing SSH keys and brute forcing users and scanning the network. So again, like using the open source Massascan to map the whole network and from here keep gaining access to other systems. Then the execution and persistence. So basically, in order to not leaving traces on who were the attackers, they were connecting via VPN to a random host that was compromised. So not at the university, but it was like some shop that was compromised. And then from there, they were triggering the attack. Then they were executing initially the malware manually. So they were connecting, executing, but from here everything was automatized. So they were scheduling tasks, gaining persistence via AutoStart, like injecting also rootkits with the kernel modules and adding its own SSH authorized keys. They were also playing different strategies to evade or to hide on the defense. So basically, they were masquerading the service, locations, and file names in order to make it more difficult for the forensics. They were hiding the artifacts and also obfuscating all the payload. So here you see an example. So basically, all the shell scripts were not just randomly viewed, but they were using these tools to obfuscate it. They were also disabling the firewall, the local firewall, eliminating other competitors, so killing any other crypto miner that was running, cleaning the logs and using not standard ports, so something that we have seen already on the previous case. Then for privilege escalation, they were using an open source as well, vulnerability explorer. So basically, it's just a script that tells you all the vulnerabilities and all the exploits available. So it was very easy for them to escalate privileges when needed, because most of the time, just with the SSH keys, they already had root access. And finally, for the command and control, they were using IRC, which is rather an old system, but it was working. So basically, they could control the whole infrastructure via IRC on a simple chat, like the one we can see here. And finally, the payload. So as we have mentioned already, it was crypto mining and DOS again. So here we can see that this was during the attack, and then when we intervened and we mitigated the issues, that then it was empty. They were using nanominer and Gminers as main miner tools. And yeah, so this is a summary of the tools that they were using, all of them for free, so nothing sophisticated, just Git cloning and running these tools, and they were able to compromise the entire infrastructure. What was the impact? So the impact was large. We started investigating in a single organization. Then we sent a notification, and then more and more were able to report that they were compromised as well. So basically, we saw that they were operating since 2020. There were more than 200 Linux servers compromised worldwide, and more than 25 organizations were impacted. We can also attribute the attacks to the people that were doing this. The attack was spreading quickly because they basically were jumping from one organization to the other. As you know, research and education is very connected. So once you have access to some university, probably that identity has access also to others. So basically they were moving quickly, and they were getting quite a lot of money for what we can see in one single crypto wallet. So we don't know if they had multiple. So based on this information, all the analysis that we were doing, we wrote different advisories. Basically, inside the advisory, we have all the information of the attack with what happened, what are the different steps that they did. And then we have also the quick detection and mitigation part, where we inform how they can detect this on their infrastructure and stop it. We also have we also use inside EGI IRTF, we also have MISP instance, where we distribute directly the indicators of compromise. So basically, this can be integrated in intrusion detection systems, on firewall, blacklist, RPs, etc. So basically, all the indicators that we gather during these incidents are always distributed. And now, this is something that will come in 2025. There will be a WLCG security newsletter when we plan to distribute this information more effectively, and where we plan to reach more and more people, so then we can also coordinate more incidents. So learnings. So we could see that there were many similarities between the incidents in crypto mining. We don't need APT or governments to compromise our sites. They didn't have 2FA enabled. They were using reusing admin passwords, not encrypted SSH keys. They didn't have at all central logging infrastructure, nor network isolation, and they didn't have any security or monitoring of the network. So basically, the impact of those incidents is that they basically had to reinstall from scratch the whole data center. Not only the computing nodes, but everything. So you can imagine that this is really critical, and that's why we always suggest that it's important to contact us if you don't know how to start organizing the security, because we have seen this multiple times. So on the infrastructure part, the recommendations that we can forward to you. In initial access, multi-factor authentication is key. Most of those attacks would not have happened if they would have 2FA enabled, because with just stealing a password, then they wouldn't be able to access anyway. Subscribe to leaked passwords. So in case some password of your university or institution is leaked, then you will get a detection. You can contact us if you want more information. Enforce policies about length, about expiration, etc., etc. So then your passwords are strong enough. Administrative accounts, keep it separate. Don't use it on your day-to-day. Add extra protections. Monitor access and set up alerts, because we could see that basically all those incidents were raised by the admin luckily detecting a misutilization of the computing, but not because of any security alerts. This would have been triggered much before, and therefore it wouldn't have impacted the whole university. When they gain access to everything, then it's game over. And finally, also patch all the systems and software. This is important, as we have seen as well. Lateral movement, so once they are inside, network segregation, if you really have a good network segregation, they won't be able to jump across so easily, and then least privilege by default. For the recovery, one of the problems, it's not only that you have to reinstall the whole infrastructure, is that you have to reinstall one by one every node, because some of the sites are not using like management tools to orchestrate, like Ansible or something like this, and then they have to reconfigure everything from scratch. And also, it's important to test and have backup infrastructure, so then you can recover as well. On the incident response part, what we have learned? Well, what we have learned is that you have to report quickly. You have to let us know, because we can support you, we can help you, provide the tools, provide you the guidance. We have also seen that the language, it can be a huge barrier. It has been difficult, the coordination in some of those incidents due to the language. So we have to adapt. We have to be simple, precise, and concise. All the information very well organized. So then it's easy for everybody, for the multiple people involved, to respond to the incident. We have to strengthen relationship with the partners. So if you have questions, just ask us. If something happens, then it will be much easier to be in contact with you, because we will know more about your infrastructure, about who you are, etc., etc. This is very important. You have to be prepared to gather evidences. So if we ask you to do a clone of the disk, or take a snapshot, or dump the memory, you should be able to know it. You should be able to know how you can do that, and have the resources available, so then you can gather this data and forwarding to us. And finally, and very important, and this will be one of the main objectives of this year, is that we need centralized logging with filtered logs. We need to have this information. We cannot do proper incident response if we cannot have data on what has happened during the attack. In order to help on that, we have improved the documentation. So basically adding more grained information about all the central logging, but also about the server configuration, deployment, access control, account management, etc. So I recommend you to check and to make sure that you follow all these different guidelines. And then finally, with the plans for 2025. So first of all, as we were mentioning now, we want to encourage sites to implement central logging and enhance the traceability for security monitoring. So basically, adding all these central isolated systems that they can give us access, or that we can see, or that we can guide on how to check for follow-up security events. Then we want to strengthen relationship with the VOs, and this is key. And this is key because, as we can see, as we know, VOs can have the day-to-day contact with the sites. They have they are coordinating operations, they are doing meetings together, etc., etc. So they know the people that it's behind sites. So by strengthening relationships with the security team and the VOs, then we will be able to handle more effectively all those incidents. Then for the EGI security events, so since we have detected these multiple accounts misusage, so trying to gather access, etc., so we need to set up a system that is very effective on detecting such access and blocking, so then we don't see this happening more and more often and people getting access where they shouldn't. Finally, we also want to improve the collaborations with other communities, so we can exchange intelligence. If there is an incident in research and education, we also get this information, so then we can forward it to our partners, to the sites, VOs, etc., so we can be aware and be protected before something happens. Initiatives, so key points or actions that we want to do in 2025. So we want to build the strategy with the EGI operations and the VOs to improve the site logging. This is not only on us, on the IRTF team, to improve this situation, but we want to really coordinate these efforts, in order to make sure that the sites are not only having logging, but are more and more often aware about security. So that's why we also want to do lightweight security exercises to test on the site level how they are responding, if they have visibility on the security events, how or the skills of the site admins, etc., to see if they really, if something happens, they will be prepared to handle. Something that we will put a lot of effort on is the coordinate with WLCG all these strengthen our relationship with the BIOS. So we will start by participating on the WLCG Open Technical Forum. So we will talk more often about security issues, about updates, about things that have happened on our infrastructures. We will work on this WLCG security newsletter to more easily and fast forward the information about the incidents, and then finally review policies and procedures. And this is key, that you forward your opinions, your feedback, because we will be able to evolve. So then that security and operations match together. Finally, we plan to organize more trainings, including participation on conferences on the thematic CERN of a school, and then other hands-on workshops that can provide learning and skills to the site admins. We also want to implement automated SCAD on the EGI central services to make sure that we in EGI are also protected. So these are the initiatives. One point about the hands-on workshop. So if you are interested, here you can find the link. This workshop will be focused on incident response and forensics. It will be a technical workshop. All the sysadmins in EGI, so we recommend this to attend. It will be focus on what they are interested in, so on handling incidents, not focus on something very specific, but in general terms on how to deal with those security events. And yes, you can subscribe to this mailing list, so then we will keep you informed, because we are finishing to drafting everything and setting up the dates. So as soon as we have that, you will be very welcome to register. And now that's everything I've got. It's been very compact a resume of everything that we have done during 2024. I think that it's clear, and you have like an overview of our activities. And now if you have questions, I will be very happy to discuss. Or if you have feedback or proposals that you think that may be interesting, we'll be happy to answer it.